Name correctly?
Liu, L-I-U, Liu.
Okay, thank you. You all have 3 minutes to address the board. Ms. Rosenthal will give you 30-second warning.
Bona Vespera. Good evening. My name is Amy Liu, and I'm a junior at Clements High School. I'm here today with my peers Amy Zhou, Edward Zhang, Claire Q, and Eric Mao. We would first like to extend our gratitude towards the ISD board members and Mr. Yaffe for their continued interest in keeping the Latin program alive at Clements. For the past 3 years, Latin has gifted me with a new arsenal of knowledge and unforgettable memories. I felt like I had just begun to hit my stride this past school year, being motivated to learn Latin, to expand my understanding of Roman history and mythology, and to participate in competitions with my team. It pains me to think that my younger peers will possibly never be able to experience the same joys in putting their knowledge to the test while feeling the rush of adrenaline when their name is called to receive an award. I believe that the advantages of learning Latin are undervalued. While schools are increasingly cutting their classics programs because Latin is a so-called dead language, I have never understood the English language better than I do now after learning Latin. The principles of verb conjugation and participles have aided my mastery of English grammar. Knowing Latin word roots makes developing my vocabulary that much more efficient. Aside from the academic advantage, Latin has provided me with a community of students, each sharing a common interest for the classics. This community created a nurturing learning environment, bestowing upon me a desire to further my classical knowledge both inside and outside the classroom. The value of Latin is not only seen by its beneficiaries. My friend once commented on how she regretted not selecting Latin as her high school language course. She remarked how Latin had what her class lacked: an intimate learning experience coupled with personal connections with peers and my teacher, Mr. Brown. I have found immense value in learning Latin here at Clements, and I ask that you please do not deprive future students of the same opportunity. Now I'd like to hand it off to my peers who will be sharing their personal experiences with Latin and its real-world applications.
Thank you very much. Next is Claire.
Sorry, I'm Amy Zhou.
Amy, okay. I'm sorry. Wait 1 second if you don't mind. Okay. Thank you, Amy. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Amy Zhou. I'm a junior at Clements, and I'm in my 3rd year of Latin this school year. To understand Latin, we must start at the beginning. And for me, the start of it all was an utter total failure, not qualifying for the Chinese for Native Speakers course. What does that say about someone who grew up on years of Chinese classes? It says that I didn't know Chinese. I didn't understand the language, no matter how many drills I did or worksheets I completed. So instead, I chose to take a language I had absolutely no connection to: Latin. But how did I get from being a struggling Chinese student to competing in grammar events with the Junior Classical League? You've all probably heard of what a large influence Latin has had on English. We see and hear phrases like per se, bona fide, status quo, etc. in our writings and media. Examine your dollar bill and you'll find a pluribus unum, out of many one, the United States motto. In inspirational Pinterest posts and backs of trendy iPhone cases, Carpe Diem, seize the day, Horus 23 BCE. It's 2019, but it's also 2019 AD, Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. But you've probably never stopped to think about words like ego, focus, honor, all of which come directly from the Latin language. In fact, around 10% of the Latin vocabulary has found its way into English without an intermediary. And around half of all words in the English language has Latin roots. Unnoticed, Latin slips into our daily lives. I'm constantly surprising myself in my connections between Latin and English. When school started this year, my friend told me about her summer job. She was working as a museum docent. I never heard of the English word before, but I hadn't needed to. Docent, the Latin word for they teach. Just last Thursday, as I sat in 6th period organic chemistry, we talked about formic acid. In our notes, the subtitle read, "From the Latin word for ant, formica." Even as I parsed through the agenda for today's meeting, I was met with the word quorum, from quorum vos unum esse volumus, of whom we wish that you be one. Latin appears in our language not only in the literal sense, but also in the forms and styles of our writing, the imprints left behind by classical writers, the poems of Virgil, the rhetoric of Cicero, the histories of Livy, the philosophies of Seneca. Their influence on our language is multifarious. So it's not just the words themselves that have reshaped my outlook on things. So too have I better grasped the way language works, what a language actually needs to be coherent, how words weave themselves into meaning. More than ever before, I'm awakened to a way of seeing what's underneath our daily interactions. This is what sets Latin apart from other languages.
30
Latin gives
seconds.
students the opportunity to see language from a new old perspective, to comprehend things at their most base form, to perceive the imperceptible links between the past and the present. Latin lets us understand, and that's what Latin is to me and to the 60 students in the Latin program at Clements. A way to understand the complexities of our fast-paced world, one that seems to be moving farther and farther into the future, but is still converging with its past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Eric. I can't read your last name, I apologize.
I'm actually Edward.
Okay.
Eric's right here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've got requests I'm working through here, so they were just working through them. So, Edward, can you please state your last name?
Edward Zhang.
Edward Zhang. Thank you, sir. You'll have 3 minutes. Go for it.
Good evening. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the board, administrators, and Mr. Yaffe for their notable support and vision in helping maintain Latin in Clements. As some of you may already know, many newer students are beginning to pursue STEM pathways for the future. In order to truly support this pattern of interest, we must not only promote our STEM classes like biology, physics, and chemistry, we must also look at classes that have the capability of supporting this new generation of STEM students. With this capacity not only to develop students' STEM skills, but also the soft skills that these students need to truly realize their potential, Latin is a perfect class to fill this role. My primary reason for taking Latin in high school was to pursue my childhood dream of becoming a doctor, and the seemingly endless connections between my knowledge of Latin and my biology class are evidence as to the benefits that Latin has brought to my prospective career in science. One distinct connection I remember making between Latin and my bio class was during one of our later tests over the human anatomy. With a large section of the test over the names of bones and muscles on the human body, which are largely taken straight from Latin, I breezed through this section of the test. Countless terms like this one, including but not limited to aqueous, unicellular, bilayer, exoskeleton, hominid, and many more, prove the deep influence of Latin, or that Latin has had on biology. Taking another step back, we can see how much classical languages like Greek and Latin have shaped the science that we know and love today. However, for me, as important or as integral Latin may be to my prospective career in medicine, I believe that the greatest benefit that taking Latin has brought to me is not simply an advantage in learning terminology and medical jargon, but rather a greater confidence in my own future. Laying a path towards achieving my goals, with the knowledge of Latin as a major stepping stone in doing so, instills a sense of stability in my plans for the future, and helps me deal with any insecurities or uncertainties that may come along the way. It is because of Latin that I'm now committed to pursuing a degree in neuroscience and going to medical school, and it is because of Latin that I believe many students will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Who's next? Are you Claire?
I am, yes.
All right. Process of elimination here. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, ma'am.
When I first saw the course Latin in the course selection sheet, my initial reaction was, how boring. But ironically, and out of a whim, I took Latin for my foreign language course because it sounded unique. And little did I know I would end up taking 4 years of Latin in high school, and maybe even more in college. So here are the things that I've learned from the almost 4 years of Latin that I've taken. Like my peers, through my studies in the Latin language, Roman history, and Greco-Roman culture, I cannot help but find connections to the modern era. Because of how interconnected the Roman culture is with modern America and even the rest of the world, the Latin program at Clements has helped me grow as both an academic scholar and a global citizen. I have found a new appreciation of the US Republican government after studying the governing structure of the Roman Republic. Through the pioneering the idea of elected officials into Senate, the civilization was one of the first to set equality of all before the law, a notion that set modern-day ideals of fairness and opportunity. Baron Montesquieu's doctrine of the separation of political powers, which was used in the creation of the U.S. Constitution, was in fact influenced by the Roman Republic. And so were the ideas of elected officials, checks and balances, quorum requirements, vetoes, term limits, impeachments, etc. And the common law and civil law legal systems used in almost all countries in the world are also having their roots in ancient Rome. Moreover, the Romans established the activity of a structured public civil discourse. In essence, the modern form of debate wouldn't exist if it were not have been the Romans who first practiced it. I'm also part of the Clements Speech and Debate team, and my education in Latin has enhanced my performance as a debater. For example, I had to memorize Cicero's speeches for Latin oratory competitions, and studying Cicero has opened my eyes to the art of speech and allowed me to implement the Ciceronian rhetoric principles into my own speeches in debate competitions. Additionally, the Latin language helped me understand another essential subject, English. Western literature is teeming with allusions to the ancient world. Learning about Greco-Roman mythology in Latin has helped me identify such references. My experiences inside and outside of my English class has thus amplified, as analyzing poetry and other literary works became that much easier to accomplish at a deeper level. Keying into details like these
30
Greco-Roman allusions has helped me better understand literature. In fact, in my own writings, I have included classical examples like Apollo, Dionysus, and Icarus. Overall, being a part of the Latin program was the best decision I've made in my high school career. From the bonds I secured with my classmates and my teacher, Mr. Brown, to the scholastic opportunities that Latin has given me, I have found myself endeared by the seemingly boring and dead language at first, but in actuality is swarming with life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eric, thank you for being here.
On the first day of school, my economics teacher asked us a question. It wasn't about scarcity, it wasn't about supply and demand, it wasn't even about economics. It was simple. How many of you are here today, here for the rest of the year, to learn economics? Half of the hands in the room went up. Here to learn for the sole purpose of learning economics, he added, not because of the plus 10 on your GPA or because you've always taken AP classes. The hands went down, save 2. I imagine this conversation happens in classrooms in not just Clements, but across the district as a whole. Yet, despite the proliferation of these talks, each with the exact same outcome, if the questions were to be posed in one of my classes, the response would assuredly be different. In a school renowned for its cutthroat competition, Latin serves as a haven for me. In that room, the pressure to outperform my peers is removed, instead replaced with a relaxed atmosphere, one that encourages us to grow together towards a common understanding. Every single day when I walk into 4th period, I don't ask myself how I can bring up my grade 1 more point or how I can maximize my score while reducing the amount of work I have to do. I ask myself how I might be able to apply the lessons learned from translating the Aeneid that day to my own life, or how Caesar's portrayal of Vercingetorix might vary with modern French representations of him in artwork we study in other classes. Latin doesn't force us to push for every single point higher on the grading scale, but rather encourages us to push for every single shred of knowledge we can get. And as a result, we don't enter Latin every day for a grade, but rather for the learning that ensues. I take Latin, we take Latin, not for the grade, but for the education. I truly believe that unlike any other language, like any other class, we don't simply strive to know Latin, we strive to understand it. But the walls of the classroom don't serve as the boundaries for this united passion for the classics we share. Outside rests a community of dedicated Latinists, Hellenists, and classicists connected in a network throughout Texas, the United States, and the world that share and spread the exact same values that our Latin program is based upon. Some of the most influential people in my life have been introduced to me through Latin, and I hope that my experiences with them and with the language will be something that the generations to come here in Fort Bend ISD will be able to share. While people may claim that Latin is a dead language today, its influence on us must not be understated. As you've already seen, the impact that it's had on our contemporary art, government, languages, and sciences is immense, and the things we mentioned today only cover a sliver of the spectrum that Latin affects. In addition to this, though, Latin lives on within us, the students, and the genuine community that has been crafted around it. Before I end tonight, I would like to again extend our gratitudes to Dr. Dupree, the Fort Bend ISD board members, the administrators, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Yaffe for their continued support for the Latin program that means so much to us and their allowance for our speeches tonight. Ad meliora, towards better things. Thank you. And
Thank you for being here.